Well, Marco Vicenzino is director of the Global Strategy Project, a geopolitical risk advisory firm. He joins us now from New York. Good to have you with us. So first of all, let's talk about the fighting that we saw in Tartus. What does that say about the strength of former Assad regime elements?
Basically, they're still existent and they can create a lot of problems. Listen, Syria obviously faces numerous challenges. On the international diplomatic front, there's a lot of skepticism from foreign powers. Internally, there's a lot of uncertainty from a political perspective. And then also there's the most important challenge is the security challenge. Now, the security challenge, you have the northeast and the east of the country. The northeast primarily between the SDF forces and the Syrian National Army. That's even more complicated because it involves support from Turkey on one side and from the US on the other. So this international dimension, which makes it even further more complicated. You have the east of the country, which you have many remnants of the forces of ISIL, also known as Islamic State. And then in the parts of the country where there's other minorities, particularly in the western side, you see it's remnants of the Assad regime, plus you have local militias in many parts of the country at the local level, which further complicates the situation. To its credit, the new transitional government has been able to attract many of the Assad movements under the Ministry of Defense. However, that's just the beginning. The key thing is you have to bring people into this process. You have to, when we keep hearing that word inclusive and representative government, it's not just in word alone. There has to be action. And a lot of concerns, the concern is that the initial euphoria of post-Assad regime is over, the celebrations. Now that realities set in, and those realities are continuing.
About the new reality, you mentioned the confrontations between the SDF, which is primarily backed by the US, and the Syrian National Army, or SNA, which is primarily backed by Turkey. Where does that leave, that battle, where does it leave the power of the authorities in Damascus?
Well, to a large extent, the powers in Damascus are trying to play to the external powers. They're trying to attract as many external support as possible. What they're looking for once is being taken off the terrorism list and the lifting of the sanctions. And the only way that can be done is through external powers. And the thing is, you can't satisfy everyone. So they have those concerns on one side, and they have to balance it with realities on the ground, who to provide more support with. And the HTS throughout obviously has had close relations with the SNA, also many differences, but also they've developed relationships with SDF forces. So they're trying to strike a balance between the two, one for domestic security reasons and one for the external powers, trying to strike a balance. And it's not an easy one to strike. This is a very difficult process. The SDF-SNA conflict is not something recent. It goes back many years. So the challenge is when we look at the security, it's not just security on the ground, but there's a huge diplomatic element to this entire conundrum.
All right, thank you so much for your analysis of the situation there. Marco Vicenzino.
Thank you.